Welcome back to the TOWKA Talks podcast. Today I am joined by Coach Frank Rich. He is the founder and creator of the Rebuilt Man. Frank, welcome to the podcast and thank you for joining me.
Jonathan, grateful to be here, man. It's real honor. Appreciate you.
So go ahead and just tell the audience a little bit about yourself and what led you to create the Rebuilt Man.
Absolutely, man. Jonathan, I appreciate the opportunity here today. My name is Coach Frank Rich. I'm the founder of Rebuilt Recovery, and I say our mission is to help men become better men by quitting porn and rebuilding their lives. And I think essentially what that means is we want guys that are struggling in their lives with maybe a compulsive or addictive behavior with porn and masturbation. We want to help them kind of unlock like that out of their life and move it, get free of this addiction. And, what led me here was kind of my own journey. I struggled with a porn addiction for about 20 years. It impacted a lot of areas of my life. It really teared apart some very deep, meaningful relationships. It definitely caused a lot of guilt and shame and fear and anxiety inside of me. And when I got on the other side of this in 2019, and it really radically transformed me in my life, I kind of felt a calling to kind of step out and do kind of a very similar thing to what you're doing here. I started a podcast that summer of 2019, and it was to share my journey, to share my story, to share what was going through this experience of getting free from something that had been a daily part of my life for almost 20 years. The podcast got picked up pretty quickly. Very fortunate to have us featured on Apple New and Noteworthy, kind of got us some early reach and exposure. And about 6-7 months into it, guys had started to reach out. I think our message back then was real. I think it was raw and vulnerable and something that not a lot of people were willing to talk about back in 2019. And still to this day, it's a very taboo conversation. But by opening up, by kind of expressing and being vulnerable, guys resonated with that message. And, I've had a background in health and fitness, leadership development and coaching pretty much my entire life. So when guys were reaching out for help, I was willing to kind of see if there was something that I could provide for them. In January of 2020, I created Rebuilt Recovery, which is our coaching company and organization. And the rest has kind of been history, man. So it's been 4 years now of really focused on obviously the podcast, obviously sharing content, building an audience, spreading a message, but in the weeds, man, in the trenches. Over 1,100 clients at this point I've worked with, and it's been truly remarkable to see some of those guys' lives transform. Better health, more muscle, better sex and connection with their wives, more money. We've had business partnerships created inside of our community. We've had businesses launched. We've had very successful already entrepreneurs get to the next level. We've had marriages restored. We've had marriages started. Guys have, popped the question, ask their girlfriend once they get this out of their life. So, the Rebuilt Man kind of came out of Rebuilt Recovery. So Rebuilt Recovery was the coaching organization for 4 years. Our kind of flagship program was Reboot Your Life, where we say we help you rebuild your body, rewire your brain, reshape your heart. So it's always this theme of like almost renewing, rebirth. The logo for Rebuilt Recovery is a phoenix that becomes a lion. The phoenix symbolizing death and resurrection, and then the lion being what I believe all men are called to be, somebody that takes dominion, takes territory in their life, and is the king and stewards it very well. So the rebuilt man is the guy that goes through that journey, the guy that gets to a point in his life where maybe things are kind of going well. We work with a lot of high performing individuals, successful entrepreneurs, business owners, CEOs, executives. So these guys are already succeeding, but this porn is like, it's a secret thing that's kind of hiding in the closet, right? So we help them eliminate that and then really rebirth them back into the world. So the Rebuilt Man was a podcast that I launched in December of last year. So after hosting the Superman Life, which is still our weekly interview show, I launched a 3 times a week kind of value-packed short episode podcast called The Rebuilt Man. That one took off as well. It was obviously branded around everything with Rebuilt Recovery. And then just about 10 or so days ago, we launched the Rebuilt Man School community. So this is our free community. So we have, programs and high level coaching and one-to-one mentorship and masterminds. So there's various kind of offerings that we send guys up through. But now we have a free community on school, skool.com/the Rebuilt Man. For any guy that is out there that is, maybe ready to kind of dip his feet into our world. So yeah, I think the original question was, what is the Rebuilt Man? But that's kind of the story genesis, to lead us to where we are today.
So, and you just said it. It's obviously pornography, masturbation, lust. It's a very sensitive area, especially for men. Obviously, I can speak on personal experience. Guys don't necessarily want to bring that out into the light because of shame, of fear, of judgment. Did you personally go through a breaking point when you told yourself okay, this is enough. I need to draw a line in the sand. I need to do something about this. And can you just tell us a little bit more about your own personal journey of when you decided to overcome everything?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think I was like most guys, right? It's something you get introduced to pretty young, early on in life. So for me, it was like 6, and a little bit of context. I'm 41 years old. So, 6 years old, I'm not finding a smartphone. I'm not finding hardcore pornography. That really kind of came into the scene probably when I was in my early 20s, 21, 22. This is kind of the origin of BlackBerry devices, smartphones. So for the young generation, the BlackBerry was the original iPhone. It was the first phone that had real media on it. So early 20s, man, I kind of get, introduced to this world of just unlimited free pornography on a laptop, on a phone. But I didn't really think about it a whole lot back then. You're watching porn, that's just what you grow up. It's a rite of passage, right? As I got into relationships in my 20s, then I started to hide these things, right? And I think, if you're out there and you're hearing this, or, you stumble across this conversation and you're like, porn's not a really big deal, but yet you're hiding every time you do it, yet you're keeping it away from people, kind of big red flags have kind of, start to go off. And I don't think that really happened to me until I was kind of in my 30s. Then I was beginning to kind of really see the negative effects, struggling with erectile dysfunction, having kind of sexual function issues, beginning to feel more and more disconnected from other people, avoiding certain social situations, feeling very alone and isolated. But for me, Jonathan, it was like a series of events that kind of truly unlocked my freedom. And I think the first one, which is not the journey I thought it was going to be, but I hired a business coach and mentor at the end of 2016, 2017. So I'd been in the entrepreneurship space. I'd ran a ticket brokerage. I'd kind of been a solopreneur, kind of doing my own thing. But I wanted to transition and really pair a couple things that were really passions of mine, which was fitness, bodybuilding, and business and marketing. So I wanted to build an online fitness company. So I hired a business coach. And through this business coach, I kind of get introduced to a group of very powerful men that kind of transformed my life. I didn't grow up in a religious home. I didn't really have any really kind of spiritual upbringing. Through these group and through these men, I did come to know Christ and surrender my life to him on October 22nd of 2018. So, about a year and a half after joining the mastermind. And there's a lot there that kind of happened, right? But I'm just kind of giving you the highlights. But I think that submission of my life and that beginning to try to follow God, you begin to kind of have a moral standard that you live your life by, which is never anything I'd really ever thought about, and I talked about this fitness business and, we were creating a lot of content. I was sharing my message, but it wasn't picking up. And, Jonathan, there was this point in January of 2019, I'm looking in the mirror one day and it's like, you're a fraud, right? Frank, you are a fraud. You're going online, you're telling people to be their best selves. Your message is all about becoming the absolute best version of yourself. Yet you have this pornography addiction that you're not talking about, that you're completely avoiding the implications. And it kind of almost then and there, I felt a shift kind of internally. I start to go down this rabbit hole of how do you overcome a pornography addiction? Watching all the TED Talks, reading the books, listening to the videos, trying to really understand the science behind this, trying to really understand okay, is there a way for me even to get out of this? Excuse me. About a month or so later, right timing, right place, right time, right people. I'm having a conversation with a great friend of mine, and he's talking about Wim Hof breathing and harness his sexual energy and how all this stuff is helping him overcome his porn addiction. Now, up until this point, I hadn't talked about it with anybody. Like, I had just done all this research silently. Like, I'm ashamed of like what's going on. Like, why can't I stop watching these dirty little videos, right? But I'm having this conversation. My friend kind of opens up and shares this with me. And this is, a very masculine man, like a Marine, like very fit. Like, we just got done having a workout, and it just shook me. I'm like, what's going on, man? Like, why are you talking about this? What makes you bring this up right now? And he's like, I don't know, man. He's like, I've been trying for 5 years to quit watching porn. He's like, I haven't found anything that works. And I just kind of felt like this sense of relief, like, okay, like here's an opportunity for me to at least share what I'm going through. And through this conversation with Zach, like I just unloaded everything. And I made a promise and commitment, and I asked for his help. That day, I went on over the next couple of days to like really open up. I opened up to my girlfriend at the time. I opened up to one of my other best friends. I remember there was this moment where I kind of I tore a laptop apart. I had a secret laptop that I hid from my girlfriend. It was like, this is the only place I'm ever going to watch porn, because I knew the implications, right? Like, I knew if you get caught with this, like things are going to get really bad. Which were all signs of addictive behavior that I was avoiding to look at for a very long time. But yeah, I tore this laptop apart, and then I'm just going down this journey, man. And, I'm talking about it. I'm praying about it. I'm beginning to journal and have gratitude and, all these little things, man. And it just, honestly, Jonathan, there was like this moment where it clicked, and I'm like, I made this choice, like, and I know if I can get past a certain period of time, like, because the science points to rewiring your brain, overcoming all of this. Like, so I knew that, like, I had to reach a certain point, and through that journey, man, everything changed. But yeah, there were a lot of moments there. But I think a couple of the big ones were kind of the ones that I shared.
Do you feel like there is a common root cause to a person's addiction to pornography, like that you've noticed over the years of working with so many people? Do you feel like there's just like a common theme, or are there just too many to list?
Yeah, if I had to say one common thing, and here's the thing, man, is I think a lot of times this root cause thing gets kind of like people spend a little bit too much time focusing on it and thinking that it's going to be this traumatic thing that happens, like I was sexually molested, or I was abused as a kid, or like I was an absent father. Does that stuff happen? Absolutely. Most people's stories, though, that I hear that are struggling with this, it's not the case. But if there was something that was kind of fundamentally root that I've seen very consistent with guys, it's going to be an early exposure. And the science points to this. There's clear and defining research and evidence that says the earlier in life that you get exposed to hardcore pornography, the higher probability that you will struggle with an addiction later on in life. And it's because brain development, like, so the male's brain is developing through teenage and adolescent years, like very important parts of our prefrontal cortex are developed through those periods of our life, through our teenage and then to early adulthood. So the end stage of male's brain development is around 24 to 25 years old. So through the teenage years and adult earlyhood, that's where your prefrontal cortex is really being developed, which gives you emotional regulation, rational thinking, the ability to process and kind of analyze things. So through those years, if you're introduced to pornography as a young kid, and that becomes something where you go to emotionally regulate yourself, well, what's happening is you're literally wiring your brain that emotional regulation is through the act of consuming pornography and masturbating. So I think if there was one core, like big root, is its early age exposure. Now, what the hell does that like that should actually scare a lot of people. I don't know the age demographics of the people that are listening to this, but if early age exposure is the number one root, coming from me that has had thousands of conversations, and I could probably get a lot of other people that I've spoken to support this, what does that mean for our future? Because, Jonathan, the average age of first exposure right now is between 8 to 11 years old, and it's only getting younger. So I think there's like, it should be a big warning, and that's why I'm very grateful to kind of see the, like, because I sit on top of this conversation, I have it all day long. It's definitely growing in its acceptance. But yeah, I think one of the biggest roots, man, is that early age exposure.
Speaking on that, it's actually not a coincidence that you talk about early exposure and your brain is developing. I can remember, because I'm 32, so it was 2001, 2002. I was like 9 or 10 years old. I was at actually Vacation Bible School, and I remember it to this day. I don't remember the context of the conversation, but I was in a group of younger, like 9 to 13 year olds, and a mom comes up to us and just out of the blue, she just says, guys, make sure you regulate what goes into your brain, meaning like
Mm-hmm.
explicit content, whether it's on television, on the computer. There weren't smartphones back then, but I can remember her saying that, and it was totally spot on because what goes into your brain, like it stays there for a very long time, especially with pornography videos and images. It
Yeah.
stays in there like glue unless you absolutely cast every thought out and make it obedient to Christ. Obviously, it's biblical, but do you feel like there are ways that guys who are listening to this, or women, anybody who's listening to this, can start applying to their own life that you've like taught in your programs to people? Like, is there something they can do today to help? Like, if they saw something or watched something years ago that they can start applying to their life so they can break free of this?
Yeah, man. I have a training on the 12 steps to creating a porn free life. I'm not going to go through all 12 of them here today, but maybe we can plug it down there somewhere below if people want to get access to that. I think the first, speaking specifically about somebody that's struggling with porn and masturbation, is the first step is, man, like you got to be radically honest and like about the problem that's going on and commit to real lasting change. And that sounds simple, right? But it's like most people actually don't do that, right? It's like, how has this habit actually hold you back from becoming the man or woman that you were born to be? Okay. Is it holding you back mentally, emotionally, spiritually, financially, professionally, physically, in your relationships, in your community? Like identify all those areas. Most guys, most people, and it changes depending upon the level of severity with it, but it's just like, yeah, it's this bad thing. It's like it's a sin, right? So I'm not supposed to do it, so I'm gonna stop. That's not a way. Like that's actually not a way that you're gonna be able to correctively change a behavior. I see everything kind of through the lens of behavioral change. Like that's kind of how I understand and see the world. So what we have to understand is like, in order to change the behaviors about something, we have to start with our thoughts. We have to start with the thoughts that we have about that behavior. And here's the thing, man: wanting to stop something because it's a sin, like it's not really a good. I mean, it should be the most important reason, but biblically, we know that human beings are flawed, and we're going to sin. So it's like that's not going to be the actual way to change the behavior. So you got to get radically clear on like what the actual problem is and commit to real everlasting change. I say in a broader sense, like obviously the 12-step stuff. We have some other great things that are free out there that we can go into if you want. But I think you have to understand that real transformation, which is the only way to truly break an addiction, is going to be rooted in an identity change. Like you have to begin to see yourself as a different person. Freedom from pornography is not the current version of you minus porn. Freedom from pornography is like the creation of a new individual. So like you have to begin to see yourself as a completely different person. So that's more of like a big overarching like idea, which I actually think is more impactful for people to truly understand.
Now, are guys reaching out to you like all the time, sharing their stories, sharing their struggles with you on social media? Because this is such a it's a silent epidemic for sure. Pornography. It's like definitely a lot of people, especially over here in the West, struggle with it and deal with it. Do you guys I ask you all the time for like for help and for answers and for information? Like, is that kind of like a common thing that you've noticed since you've tackled this for a few years now?
Yeah, well, I mean that's we've built a company and organization around that message, right? So I mean we're like not only are guys reaching out to us, but it's like we're throwing it at them. So I have a weekly podcast. We do, 3 long-term form videos on YouTube every single week with, as many shorts as we can populate. My Instagram has grown, and that's our core message over there, So with all the content and with all the free resources, it's like we're almost asking guys, like we're going to try to find them. So it's a back and forth. Like, yeah, 100% they're reaching out to us, but we're marketing our message in a way that we can actually help. If a guy says, "Hey, can I ask you some questions?" Like, guys that are looking for tips, like we're gonna funnel them into a system to, because if they want free resources, like there's tons of free stuff out there. But yeah, like that's who we are. That's what we do. Like our entire message is around raising awareness, sharing help, and then for the guys that want to take that next step, we'll take it with you.
With everything that you're doing, is better because you have overcome your addiction and you're on the other side of the fence. Obviously, there's still struggles like with any addiction, like with alcohol, with drugs. But do you feel like you're a much better man today since you decided to change everything about yourself?
Absolutely, man. Everything. And I would actually say that I don't think that people need to think that there's always going to be struggles. I think that's a limiting belief. I mentioned before we started recording that I've been recording episodes for the Superhuman Life today. We had James Swanwick on, who is the founder of Alcohol Free Lifestyle. We had an amazing conversation because there's so many similarities in the work that James does and what we do. And I think one of the things that keeps people stuck in life, whether it's in drugs, in alcoholism, in porn addiction, or even in like unlocking their true greatness, is holding on to limiting beliefs. And I think one limiting belief that a lot of people have is that if you struggled with an addiction, you're always going to struggle with that addiction. Like that holds on to an identity. So that's the opposite of what I want people to do. 12 steps is going to tell you to go in every single day, raise your hand, surrender to the addiction, hold this belief that something holds power over to you, and you need to fight it one day at a time. That sounds to me like a very exhausting life. If I need to spend every single day for the rest of my life trying to fight or stay sober from an addiction, sounds incredibly exhausting. I would rather leave that part in the past. Like I'd rather transcend it, right? Literally break it, rip it out of me, destroy it, kill it, metaphorically, right? Create a new version of myself, and then use all that energy that I'm worried about managing the addiction to create an amazing life, to create an amazing marriage. I'm not married. I'm a single man. I'm in a committed relationship, but I'm not married. So that wouldn't be one area I could say my life has improved. I have hundreds of successful students and clients that their marriages have improved. But my financial life is wildly better than it ever was before. We've done millions of dollars in the last few years in sales. The biggest thing though is, Jonathan, is like, I'm at peace. Like I put my head on the pillow every night at peace. And I had an amazing physique before, and I'm not bragging about myself, but I was a top level national bodybuilder. I had some financial success before. So things on the sheet had looked okay before. What I lacked though was any sense of real inner peace or fulfillment. And I think getting porn out of my life provided me with that. And then, yeah, that's the message that we've shared everywhere else. But yeah, every part of my life is better. And that's a message that I would share with anybody. Everything in your life will improve without porn. Life is better without porn, but also you don't have to struggle. Like I think that's the more important thing for people to understand, is you don't have to struggle with this thing.
So, Frank, for anybody who's listening to this, maybe we're scrolling through YouTube and clicked on the video, any of my followers, if they want to get in touch with you, if they want to start your programs, where can they find you on social media and YouTube?
Yeah, I think, Coach Frank Rich everywhere. So Coach Frank Rich on YouTube, Coach Frank Rich on Instagram. I mentioned at the beginning, we just launched a brand new free community on school.com/the rebuilt man. Or if you just go into the search engine there and just go to school and search for us, you'll find us. But Instagram's the best place to connect with me. You can drop in, ask me a question, or check out the YouTube channel. Coach Frank Rich.
And I will put all of the links in the description below, as well as the stuff that Frank was talking about earlier with his programming. Frank, I want to thank you so much for joining me for this episode and willing to do everything you're doing today for men out there everywhere and just making this world a much better place while we're trying to both do the same mission, which is to help people become the best version of themselves. Guys, please subscribe to the channel. Continue to help me by spreading the word out with what I'm doing and my YouTube and my podcast. If you didn't watch the last video or the last podcast episode, the links will be in the description below. And until next time, I'll see you guys on the other side.